Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we are going to be looking at the Leatherman PST II. This was the first upgrade to the original multi-tool. Now what's interesting about the PST II is the number of changes that it went through. So most people think that the PST II was actually released in 1996, but there's actually some very rare versions of the PST II that came out in late 1995. Its production run lasted until 2004, and during that time there was quite a few changes. Now my particular model is the 1997 version, and the way you can tell that is on the bottom of the tools. When we go to look at them, there's always a date stamp on these earlier versions, so you'll be able to tell what year yours was produced. Now the reason I like this one is because this was the first year that the PST II got the scissors. So the first 2 years, late 95 and 96, they were set up more similarly to the original PST. And in 97 is when they added scissors. You'll also note that on the pliers of this one, it has the stamping for USA because these pliers were actually made in the USA. After that, the Leatherman doesn't actually make their plier heads. They get those from a manufacturer. And originally the manufacturer was based in the United States, but later they moved to Mexico. And I don't remember what year it was for certain, but at some point California actually sued Leatherman because they had made in the USA on their product. And you can only do that if a certain percentage of the product is actually manufactured in the USA. And because the plant that made their plier heads ended up moving to Mexico, it fell underneath that threshold. And so regardless that the rest of the tools were made in the USA, they can no longer print made in the USA. And so they started just putting Leatherman tool on the plier heads, which is kind of interesting. So let's get into the PST II and show you some of the changes that it underwent. Now, there are some very nuanced changes that it went through year after year after year. But I'm just going to, this is the 1997 model again. And this is going to be the one that had the first pair of scissors, like I mentioned before. So this one is kind of unique for that reason. So let's get into the PST II. So with this multi-tool, I actually left the sheath out because I wanted to highlight, back in the day, and they still have sheaths that are similar to this box shape, but back in the day, Leatherman used to send out some pretty decent sheaths. Now, these aren't quite the quality that you would get with the Leatherman Wave. When it came out in 1998, they had a really nice leather sheath for it, but the sheath for these was actually pretty nice. And what I like about the PST and the PST II is their compactness. They are super lightweight carry multi-tools, and because they use inner tools like that, when you close them up, they form a very rectangular, boxy shape. So they're actually quite nice to handle or to carry. So one of the first things we're going to look at is the pliers. Now, I'm going to pull out the PST here real quick. Now, later versions of the PST II actually came with a beefier plier, but if we set these side by side, you can see the difference in the pliers. And let's just let's zoom in there a little bit and take a little better look at that. So you can see that the plier angle configuration was different. Now, in later years, they also, like I mentioned before, they switched from Leatherman USA into Leatherman tool, and then the pliers actually got beefier in later versions. So if you have a model that is like a 02, 03, 04, you're going to find that the pliers are more similar to that of the PST, the original. So let me get zoomed back out here, and we'll set the PST to the side. So all the tooling on here is slip jointed. Now, a couple of let's go over the few of the first. So the first thing is the knife blade. In the knife blade, this was the first year that they came out with a serrated blade. Before the 95 and the 96 model, they were just a standard blade. This is one thing that I actually don't like about this tool. I prefer just the straight blade as opposed to a combination blade like this. And then on the file, we'll just go ahead and get the other large tool out. I may be mistaken on this one, but I'm pretty sure that the 97 version of the PST was the very first year that they introduced the diamond file. So on this side is a crosscut file, and on the other side is the diamond file. And this one also has the edge file as well. But you'll notice what's different about this diamond file is they actually have a little nail run in here, which is very, very interesting. In fact, it's been a while since I looked at the PST II, and I had forgotten that they had that in there. So not only was it a flat diamond file, but it was also made to be so that it could be used more like a nail file, which is also very interesting. We'll just go ahead and fan the rest of the tools out on this side. Now, early on, Leatherman had a real affinity for flat drivers. So in this tool, you're going to get, I believe in this one, it has 3 flat drivers. So here's your little micro driver. They also had the Phillips, but you can see how the Phillips on here, where when it folded down, they left the head of the Phillips a little further up than the rest of the tools. That way they could broaden it out, which is something they do in other multi-tools as well. I'm not sure why they don't do that in more, to be honest with you, instead of going with the flattened drivers like you get with the Wingman and the Sidekick and stuff like that. So I think they should go back to that for some of those more budget multi-tools, but nonetheless. So that's your number 2 Phillips screwdriver. And then this is your can opener, bottle opener. It was later, I don't remember if they did it in the PST II in later versions, but it was later that they ended up adding in the wire stripper. And then if we flip around to the other side, we'll save the scissors for last. We've got our 1/4 inch flat driver, and then we have our 3/16 flat driver. You'll notice this is one of the tools that did change how they integrated it in. So you can see that the nail nick or the nail pull on this one is really quite different than what earlier versions or later versions of this tool were. So it's interesting that they have that particular style of nail pull. It's actually a little sharp in there, to be quite honest with you. And the one tool that they got rid of from the PST was the awl. And one thing that they added, this was the first year that Leatherman ever added scissors to its multi-tool. So in order to get them out, that driver came out with it. Let me fold that back over. So these are the same scissors that you found in the original Wave, and I was talking about that Leatherman Wave original sheath. You can still actually get this, by the way. So we're going to pull out the Leatherman Wave real quick, and this is the same scissor that the original Leatherman Wave had. It's quite different than what you get in modern versions of the Leatherman Wave. It's a little bit beefier, though I don't know that it cuts any better. I've used these, and they work pretty well for light duty tasks, for paper and stuff. But if you go and try cutting on cordage with them, then they tend to, maybe the pivot's not quite strong enough on these. Should have had a little bit larger pivot, but they tend to kind of want to spread apart on you. So for regular light duty tasks, if you're just cutting no more than just paper, you're going to be fine with these. But this was the original scissor application for the Leatherman multi-tools. It came out in 1997 in the PST II. So overall, this is actually kind of an upgrade. Now, if I had been deciding what to do with these back in the day, I think probably I would have dropped off one of the little screwdrivers. More so, I think I would have dropped off the little micro driver, though that can work as a nice little punch down tool. Maybe it would have been better to get rid of the medium driver in favor of an awl. I just know a lot of people, and it used to be that I didn't see quite the value of an awl in a multi-tool, but over the years, I have come to appreciate, especially in larger tools like the Leatherman Surge and the Super Tool 300, that they have a very robust awl, and I find that I use it a lot more than I used to. Now, this one didn't have the ability to put a pocket clip, but like the PST original, they integrated this little lanyard hole here so that you could attach a small lanyard to it. I've never been a big fan of lanyard holes. I would just rather they have a way to integrate a pocket clip into them. In fact, in some of the other tools like the rebar and the knifeless rebar and various different others, even the new Bond, they include a dedicated slot for a lanyard ring. And I would just assume they get rid of that entirely and actually add in an extra tool in there, or an extra implement, instead of wasting a space, in my opinion. With this tool, you could carry it in the pocket because it was quite comfortable with this boxy shape. But it would have been much nicer had it had the ability to put a pocket clip on it. Also, the sheath, as we mentioned before, was quite slim, narrow, so it was a pretty comfortable carry. Now, I never carried this one. In fact, I never carried the PST either. I just have them for my collection, and I've rarely used either one of them. My first multi-tool that I really put into use was in 1999, about a year after the original Leatherman Wave came out. And I ran that until the Wave upgraded to the Generation 2 and then on to the Surge. So this is a tool that I really haven't used very much. It's a very compact and nice tool. And they're, like with the new Leatherman Bond, they're trying to harken back to this more minimalist style of tool, more, original tool, I guess, if you will. The PST II, it went through so many different changes, but the one thing that I find very interesting about this is the fact that they included that nail line in there in the file. It's been so long since I actually pulled this multi-tool out that I actually had forgotten that they had included that in there, but maybe they ought to do that in some newer versions. I could see the value of both. Actually, I think I'd probably like it without it. But nonetheless, it's an interesting change that they had done to the original PST II back in the day. So this is the PST II. And I kind of show you the date stamp real quick. So if you look down there at the bottom there, mine is 0197, so this is January 97. So this was one of the very early versions in 97 that came out. Now, like I said, there's so many different variations to PST 2. If you have one, check out your date stamp. You can also go to, I believe it's smartknives.com, and they really go through and list the variations of the Leatherman PST 2 to show you what changed. Some of those changes were kind of major, and then other times they were pretty subtle. But if you have one, you can go there and really get an idea of where yours differs from other versions of the Leatherman PST 2. My name is Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.